Hi ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another story from the Little Bighorn. My name is Michael Hash. I'm a longtime volunteer interpreter here at the battlefield. Today we're going to talk about the only place on the battlefield that the Reno-Benteen survivors and the members of the Terry and Gibbon column who arrived at the battlefield and found the Custer dead said they found any evidence of a organized defense on the whole, among the whole Custer area of the battlefield, the whole Custer portion. But first, I want to remind you that the Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument is open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. You can feel free to take a walk up the Custer Hill, Last Stand Hill, and over across the street to the Indian Memorial. You can also take our tour road, which leads out to the Reno-Benteen Defense Site and back. There's wayside interpretive panels to stop and read along the way. You can walk around the trail at Reno-Benteen. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, our visitor center is still closed. Our museum is still closed. If you're interested for yourself, your children, your grandchildren in becoming a junior ranger, I suggest you go to our website and email us. We'll send you all the necessary information. Today I'm standing on Calhoun Hill. Again, the only place on the whole battlefield that there was any sign of an organized defense found by Reno-Benteen survivors. It's called Calhoun Hill because we know Company L, which was under the command of Lieutenant James Calhoun, fought and died up on this hill. Now Calhoun was known as the Adonis of the Seventh, the best looking man in the whole outfit according to his contemporaries. He was married to Custer's little sister, Margaret Emma Custer. They were married when she was about 20, so she was left widowed about 4 years later, widowed about the age of 24. When Calhoun was promoted to first lieutenant a year or two before his marriage, he told Custer, he said, when the time comes, you shall not find me wanting. In other words, something happens, I got your back. He did. He died trying to do just that. But the Calhoun episode really can't be understood unless we remember a few other things earlier in the battle. Remember that Custer, after he separated from Reno and Benteen in the pack train, made a move down into Medicine Tail Coulee, about a mile down the hill from over the hill down at the river from where I'm standing. We know that he eventually withdrew, and all 5 companies under his command, companies C, E, I, F, and L, all gathered here, reformed here one last time. Then it appears Custer made his what turned out to be the fatal mistake of dividing his command one last time. He leaves 3 companies. We call it the right wing now, or historians consider it the right wing, under the command of Captain Miles Keogh of Company I, back here on Calhoun Hill to act as a rear guard and as a beacon for Benteen. Custer had sent a last message to Benteen urging him and ordering him to come quickly, bringing the ammunition packs. At this point, Custer and 2 companies, the so-called left wing, companies E and F, right out, probably behind Custer Battle Ridge here, out past where the last stand eventually was made, sweeps down past the visitor center and down toward the river, down in the river valley below. We believe, or historians suspect, Custer's plan was to round up women and children to use as hostages, human shields, to prevent the warriors from attacking him. That's the general idea. It appears that from all evidence, from the body dispositions and the archaeological and the warrior accounts, that Company L formed the skirmish line here, probably along this ridge out behind those where those vehicles are parked, down facing Deep Coulee, to keep the warriors at bay. We also believe that Company I, under the command of Captain Miles Keogh, was down in that so-called Buffalo Wallow down yonder, probably being held in reserve. Company C was also probably at some point being held in reserve. I should point out that it's long been said that Company I, under the command of Keogh was in command of this wing. However, recently, Michael Donahue, in his book Where the River Runs Red, suggests that he believes that Keogh was shot and mortally wounded down in Medicine Tail Coulee. That would have left the command, the whole command here, under the command of Lieutenant James Calhoun. Now, Calhoun's second in command was John Jacob Crittenden, Lieutenant John Jacob Crittenden. Crittenden actually was an infantry soldier, but he was assigned to the 7th for this campaign. Crittenden has a glass eye. He had suffered the injury in a hunting accident about 7 years earlier. 7 months earlier, and he underwent surgery, I believe, in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's when he had the glass eye. Now, the fighting up here takes place over quite a bit of period of time, according to all the warrior accounts. There was no mass charge early on. Many warriors, there was only a few warriors who were down at Medicine Tail Coulee to meet Custer when he moved down to the river. Most of the warriors in the village, the Sioux, the Cheyenne, the handful of Arapaho, were down fighting Reno, about 1.5 miles south of Medicine Tail Coulee. But after Reno was defeated and Custer was seen here at Medicine Tail, the warriors turned around. Reno was already fleeing for cover up on what we now call up on the bluffs, the Reno-Benteen Defense Site. So he was no longer an immediate threat to the village. But it still takes time for the warriors to come back up this way. They've just been riding furiously, fighting a desperate battle to protect the village. They stopped, many of them, to get new fresh ponies. Crazy Horse actually stopped in the village, decided to prepare for battle. He went through a routine every time he went out to battle, and he did it again this time. Stopped in the village. According to his fellow warriors, he had to put on fresh paint. He always had a lightning bolt down his face and hailstones on his chest, a pebble behind his ear, throws dust over himself. The other warriors said they're getting impatient. Come on, Crazy Horse, there's a fight going on, but he took his time. He did move here, and he played an important part in the rest of the battle. So this all takes time, but the warriors are using the draws, the coulees, the high grass, these bushes you see around us, like here, creeping closer and closer, using the terrain, and more, soon, but this takes about an hour or so, possibly, but there's hundreds of warriors now. They're down massed at various places beyond Henryville, down in the Deep Coulee area. We know that several hundred are massed down below the ridge diagonal that you can see, the closest ridge back there, down over the hill from there, several hundred yards. We call it Greasy Grass Ridge. So this all takes time, and there's just long-range firing, and it basically, according even to the warriors, just as a catch-as-catch-can kind of fighting. Somebody sees a warrior stick his head up, they take a shot at him, but and the warriors, the same thing. They raise their head, fire a shot, duck back down. So there's probably very few casualties, and this goes on for, like I said, about an hour. But then the warriors start getting emboldened in higher numbers and everything, they moved down where you see the vehicle going down over the hill down there, is what we call Finkel-Finley Ridge. They're massing down in there, and they're getting closer and closer. It appears that Keogh or Calhoun or whoever's in charge at this point sends Company C in a deliberate counterattack down to drive the warriors off of Finkel-Finley Ridge. And they do withdraw for a short time, but then down the Greasy Grass, there's only about 35 soldiers down there. There's several hundred warriors massed on Greasy Grass Ridge, according to Kate Bighead, a Cheyenne woman who witnessed the battle from down there. Wooden Leg says there was only about 30, maybe 40 soldiers down again on Finkel-Finley Ridge. So at this point, Lame White Man, a Southern Cheyenne warrior, yells out, "Hoka hey, it's a good day to die, we can kill them all!" And he and Yellow Nose, Sioux warrior Yellow Nose, Contrary, Big Belly, and others, they lead probably the only Hollywood-style mass charge Indian attack of this whole battle, comes swooping up over Finkel-Finley Ridge, named for the two sergeants from Company C whose bodies are found down there, Jeremiah Finley and August Finkel. And they come, the warriors, half the soldiers are wiped out, the other half fleeing for their lives, running up this way, some on horseback, some on foot. It appears then, according to the archaeologists, to meet this threat and to cover Company C, Calhoun orders the skirmish line over Henryville to reform. It appears, according to what the soldiers saw later, he reformed it in sort of a semicircle, coming from where you see those markers over there to where I'm standing and down over that way, to try to protect the again, Company C, as well as the horses from Company L are being held in what we call Horseholders Ravine, a depression, actually a ravine of sorts, that runs down from the Tor Road here all the way down past the Keogh sector. And all during the battle, the warriors talk about, Gall had said he had wanted the warriors to stampede the horses, and so the warriors had been firing arrows and panicking the horses because not only are the horses a great prize for the warriors, socially and economically, but every horse that is stampeded and captured, that one less horse for a soldier to ride, leaving him on foot. Also, all the spare ammunition is being held in the saddlebags. So there was all this going on. At some point, again, but what happens was when the skirmish line reforms here, that leaves Henryville open. So unless, even if some of the soldiers were left on Henryville and another skirmish line here, it's been drastically weakened. We know that there were 44 soldiers assigned to Company L, and if every fourth man is holding a horse, that's about 11 men off the firing line right there. You're down to 33. If indeed they split that in half, you got about 16 or so soldiers on each skirmish line. They're both drastically weakened. At that point, and emboldened by this charge coming up over the hill, hundreds and hundreds of warriors under Gall and Two Moons and Crow King, like a tidal wave, they come swooping up over the hill. That, in addition to the soldiers, or the warriors under, and again a couple hundred under Lame White Man and Yellow Nose and them, they're all swarming up over the hill. All of a sudden, this part of the battlefield goes from just kind of minor firing to it's being overrun. It appears that Company I really didn't even have time to react to what's going on up here. It was over that quickly. Pretty soon the soldiers are running for their lives, some on horseback, some on foot, Some are running that way toward Company I, out toward Last Stand Hill. A few are riding down back from where they came, Medicine Tail Coulee, or perhaps back toward where Reno and Benteen are fighting. And this massive confusion, Turtle Rib, Miniconjou warrior, talks about the chaos up here. He said it was a running fight. He said soldiers are running every which way, and horses, even though those on horseback, are running each way. And it appears that Calhoun and Crittenden tried to keep the soldiers in line. They were stationed. They said they were found right behind the skirmish line, where, according to the Reno Benteen survivors, exactly where they should have been. There's at least 11 body markers up here, which indicates places where soldiers fell. Even if a few of them are spurious, quite a number of soldiers were killed up here. And it didn't last long, and it didn't last much longer in Keogh, because at this point Crazy Horse makes a charge up over Battle Ridge, kind of cuts off Keogh's command and the panicking, fleeing soldiers from Calhoun Hill and Company C, cuts them off. Only maybe a dozen or so make it all the way to Last Stand Hill. The rest are all killed. When this Reno Benteen survivors come up and examine the battlefield 2 days later, they found what they said, both Lieutenant Miles, or Captain Miles Mullen, and Lieutenant George Wallace. They say it was the only place on the battlefield there was any sign of a fight, any sign of an organized defense. They said they found piles of spent cartridges and shell casings in regular intervals where soldiers would have been stationed on a skirmish line, and the same, and fewer, but the same also in this part of the skirmish line. Archaeologists said Richard Scott, in his book Archaeology, History and Custer's Last Battle, said more spent shell casings were found on this part of the battlefield than any others. Warrior accounts suggest that more Indian casualties actually took place around Calhoun Hill than at any other portion of the battlefield. Even though there are no markers for that we know Indians fell, the historical record indicates there certainly were. So Lieutenant Wallace talks about finding a pile of 25 to 35 spent shell casings in some piles up on this area. Lieutenant Doridio says any place else there was he was shocked. There was very few shell casings found. No sign of a fight, he says. There's kind of a couple interesting little sidebars to this, and after all, these are stories from the Little Bighorn. I'm going to tell you the one that's I found in Evan S. Cannell's Son of the Morning Star. Now, Son of the Morning Star is actually total transparency here, one of my favorite books about the battle. Now, historians don't look at it that way, researchers, because there's no footnotes, so you don't know exactly where he's coming from. But I find it fascinating. I think it's a fascinating study, even though now it is hopelessly outdated when you're talking about the Custer portion of the battle, because it was written well before any of the archaeological studies, and we've learned so much more about the battle. But for its for just its writing and its character studies of each individual, some of the even more obscure individuals here in the battle, and the whole overview of the war and the relations between the United States and the Native Americans out on the plains. It's fascinating. In any event, apparently he gets this from a letter that Lieutenant Edgerly wrote to his wife after the battle. He said, on the night of June the 22nd, up on the Rosebud, right after Custer departs from Terry and Gibbon on the up on the Yellowstone River. Their first night out of camp, he said they were all singing around, the officers are sitting around singing various songs, and apparently Calhoun tells them he just received a cake from his wife. How he got the cake up here, you can only guess that perhaps she sent it by the steamer up to the Powder River Supply Depot. It's about the only way you can get a cake from Fort Abraham Lincoln, 100 or 200 miles away. In any event, he promises that each one of the officers a big slice of cake after they defeat Crazy Horse. Now, the cake disappears from history after that, so you can only try to figure there's only two ways it could have gone with Calhoun after that night. He either put it on the pack train or he had to carry it on his saddlebags. Now, if you put it in the pack train, you can just theorize or guess that probably it was found, because we know the packs were on the Reno Benteen defense site. Some hungry soldier may have gotten into it during the siege at the Reno Benteen defense site. Or the possibility exists that some hungry warrior found it on the horse, and there's just the possibility and kind of the image of a warrior walking around the battlefield when it's all over, munching on a piece of cake, which sounds kind of kind of unsettling to modern minds, but the reality is I've been in many crime scenes over my years as a journalist, and seen police officers and journalists munching away at crime scenes where people have been lying dead. So it can happen. Final thing, when the bodies were buried, they were first buried where each soldier fell. When the reburial parties came out here a year later and gathered up all the human remains, Lieutenant Crittenden's father made a special request that his son remain buried where he fell. Apparently that was somewhere right in the middle of the road, probably down where his marker is now. Calhoun and Crittenden's markers are the two in the foreground, if you can see them. Calhoun's in front, Crittenden's in back. Crittenden was buried initially on the Tor Road, but when the Tor Road was paved, the body was exhumed and reburied down in the National Cemetery. So I hope you've enjoyed another story from the Little Bighorn. As always, I want to thank my cameraman, Mr. Ken Woody, Chief of Interpretation at the battlefield, for all his camera work and suggestions out here. I also want to thank Miss Amanda Watson for her technical assistance. She's another volunteer in the park, as I am here. The next time, I think we're going to change directions a little bit. I'm going to tell you the story about one of the Medal of Honor winners here, Private Peter Thompson, a water carrier up at the Reno Benteen Defense Site. Until then, I want to thank you, the viewers, for joining us, letting me come into your living room or wherever you're viewing this from, your cell phone or your tablet or whatever. And thank you for joining me here for another story at the Little Bighorn. My name is Michael Hash.